Hi guys, my name is Burb and I like to go to space. So, a lot of people since the release of The Witch Queen have been coming back to Destiny, some of my own friends included, and a lot of the number one question I get asked is what do I do with my armor? What mod should I be using? What kind of playstyle should I be going for? So, since I've been answering that question quite a lot, I thought, why not make a video? I know obviously this is a little bit different compared to the rest of my content, but yeah, I like to think that if I can help, why not? Yeah, I'm not I'm not a Cammy Cakes. I'm not a Waller. I'm not a top 1% player in anything. I'm just a regular guy who enjoys playing the game, and I'm a massive stat nerd. So I love doing this kind of shit. So in terms of stats, I know a lot of people before they left, we basically only had these three, and I think it was the release of Shadowkeep that gave you discipline, intellect, and strength back. So each one obviously governs its own individual thing. So we have mobility for speed and jump height, resilience for shield capacity, recovery for getting your health back, grenade is in discipline, intellect for your super, and strength for your melee. Now, the other key thing to mention is that mobility will govern the cooldown of a Hunter Dodge, resilience will govern the cooldown of a Titan Barricade, and recovery is for the regen of a Warlock Rift. So that's something to keep in mind when you are doing your builds. Now for me, in terms of my own personal order of priority, recovery is the one to go for. You should aim for as much recovery as you possibly can. Realistically, if you can get it, go for 100. I find myself struggling to play on even like 9 recovery now because I hate sitting behind a wall praying I'm not going to die and waiting for my health to come back. So the quicker that happens, the better. This also gets you the most benefit for your investment in comparison to something, say, like intellect, which has diminishing returns. So recovery is something I recommend for all classes, not just Warlock. All classes will benefit from having 100 recovery. The next stat I look into in terms of Warlocks is Grenade and your Discipline stat. So I run tier 10 Discipline because a lot of Warlock abilities are tied around your grenade, and throwing grenades is fun. It also can tie into things like Bottom Tree Voidwalker, where if you consume your grenade energy, you can regenerate your health and grant the Devour effect. Devour regens your health, and for a short time afterward kills restore additional health. And while Devour is active, killing enemies extends its duration and recharges your grenade. So this is kind of like having the Demolitionist perk that you'll find on some weapons on a cooldown. So to get the max uptime possible, I'll run that quite a lot, and I'll swallow my grenade and proceed to kill everything in sight. Also works really well with Middle Tree Dawnblade, I should say, where you can actually convert your grenade into a healing aid. Very good for keeping yourself and your teammates alive. The next stat I would look into would be Intellect. Now, with Intellect, you can fake boost this stat if you like, but I'll discuss that later on when I discuss combat styles. Intellect means, obviously, the higher Intellect you've got, the more super energy and the more supers you're going to get. And the only issue with intellect is it does get diminishing returns over time, so the more you spec into it, the less you're going to get back. So what I would recommend for most players is, especially if you're doing something like a PvE build, is get as much as you possibly can, but it's not the end of the world if it's not that high. Next we have mobility. Mobility is for your movement speed and your jump height. This now, when it says movement speed, your actual sprint speed is unchanged. What this actually affects is your strafe speed. So actually using, if you're on PC, A and D and moving left to right, that is the speed that it affects, not your forward speed. I'm pretty sure there's a better word for that, but I can't think of it right now. But yeah, your actual running speed is unaffected. Now, the last two I want to talk about are, at least in my opinion, very meh, but you can create a character how you like. So with resilience, I've got 5 at the moment. Now resilience sounds great on paper because the more shield and the more health you've got, the better, right? However, this doesn't get you a lot in the long run of things. For example, if you're running PvP, whether you are tier 10 resilience or tier 0 resilience, it's still going to take a three tap to the head with a hand cannon to kill you. It's not going to change that. What it does change is occasionally, and I do mean occasionally, you can not get one tapped by a sniper in Grandmaster Nightfalls, depending on burn and things like that. So take what you can get, but it's not the end of the world. Now, the only exception I have to this rule would be for Titans. So for Titans, you guys can have a very interesting gameplay loop. So because this is directly tied to the cooldown of your barricade, if you run tier 7 resilience and combine it with a mod called Utility Kickstart, which will go on Stasis Element Affinities, if you run 2 of these and put your barricade up, this will basically be like having Fate 100 resilience. So, just to double check what the mod does again. When your class ability energy is fully expended, you gain class ability energy. So with double this double stack, so this is my PvP class item, this double stack gets you around 20 to 25% of your class ability back. So with Titans on tier 7 resilience, if the barricade naturally dissipates and doesn't get destroyed, by the time it dissipates, you'll have your next barricade. Very good if you're trying to peek snipers and things like that. You can use the barricade to get yourself around that. So that's the kind of only exceptions to the rule. The last stat to talk about would be strength. As you can see, I'm running 0 strength because I don't find it overall that beneficial for me personally. The last thing you want to be doing is going into a Grandmaster Nightfall and trying to punch everything. You will die a lot. So hence why I have a mod here that actually causes me to lose strength, and I don't care because I've got Protective Light as the extra benefit. However, for a lot of Titan builds, or if you want to go for a melee centric build, they can be fun. They are viable. If you want to, if that's your thing, go for it. I'm not here to dictate what you should and shouldn't run. I'm just here to provide you with options. So the next question to get asked is, what affinity should my armors be and what mod should I be using? Now, the best way to look at that for yourselves is if you go into the collections tab and click on the mods icon, go down to combat style, and here you will find all the combat style mods, and these are the difference between being powerful and utterly broken. They will keep you alive, they will give you damage buffs, they'll give you super energy, whatever you want them to do. So what I like to say to people is, okay, once you hit probably around 1300 in power, something like that, especially if you're a new player, start thinking about, right, what do I want to accomplish? So with that in mind, like, do I want to stay alive more? Do I want to improve the damage of all my weapons? Do I want to improve the damage of my heavy weapon? Do I want to nuke things in the entire room? That kind of thing. Once you've decided that for yourselves, you can then actually go through these mods. Some of them you may not have. Ada has a rotating daily, which means she'll be selling these randomly. So that's the best place to check for them, with the exception of the elemental well mods, which are picked up through the seasonal stuff. So even though there's a lot of mods here, they can basically be split up into 3 different types, but they all follow the same rule set. And that rule set is, what do I want my armor to do, and how do I get it to do it? So, for example, if I wanted to build around Protective Light, where once I'm charged with light, I consume all of my stacks and get superior damage resistance. This is, in my opinion, one of the best survivability mods in the game, hence why I built around it. So it's okay, So how do I become charged with light? So we have taking charge, where you pick up orbs, which is probably the easiest one to do. Shield break, which is very good with Grandmaster Nightfalls or just high tier content or anything with match game, where you can become charged with light by just breaking the shield. We also have getting charged with light by doing a finisher, but this does consume your super energy, so this is less than ideal. You can also do it with the weapons that you like to use. We have quick charge here, where getting kills with shotguns or fusion rifles will get you charged with light. There's also a pulse rifle one somewhere, which I have now lost. Swift charge, where you get pulse rifles, sidearms, and submachine guns. Now, the only thing I would say with these in particular is the last time I tried them, they weren't working very well. So just keep that in mind when you go to try them out. Now, once you've charged with light, like I say, you want to determine how many stacks you want. So mods like charged up will allow for additional stacks of light. So obviously, the more stacks you've got, the more benefit you'll get out of that effect, the more you can use that effect, etc., etc. And then you want to go, okay, what do I want it to do? So high energy fire is a common one, particularly for PvP, because it does work in there. And you get a 25, I want to say it's 20 or 25% damage buff to your weapons. Once you kill a target, you'll lose 1 stack of charge with light. We also have grenade final blows heal you. We have regain a portion of your grenade energy whilst throwing your grenade. The possibilities are endless. We also have boosted rocket launcher damage. This does stack with explosive light, which is the perk you get on the current ritual weapon, which is the Ascendancy rocket launcher. And we also have Lucent Blade for swords, which is a very good mod if you like using swords. The possibilities are endless, and that's kind of what you want to be doing with all of these. Is if you're using charge with light, how do I become charged with light? How many stacks do I want? What do I want the stacks to do? Now, the next ones I'll go over would be Elemental Wells. These are kind of the newer mods. Recently received a couple of buffs as well as additionals. So, I played around with the well build until I settled on charge with light, purely for my higher end content. But they still follow the same rule. How am I going to make a well? So we have armaments where final blows with your damage type that matches your subclass will have an escalating chance to spawn a well. We have kills with your super and kills with a grenade. So how are you going to spawn your wells? This also goes into Explosive Well Maker, which rapidly defeating combatants with explosive damage spawns a solar elemental well. And then what do you want that well to do? So a couple of options we have here are the Well of Life, which is a healing regen. I like it. I know a lot of people don't. They say it's not that good, but who doesn't want to get healed more? The other two we have, which are the key ones here, are Font of Might, which is a 25% damage buff to a weapon that is the same as your subclass. So, for example, if we just go to my character here, if I'm running Solar and I was running a well build and I had Font of Might running, once I picked up that Solar Elemental Well, my Cartesian Coordinate Fusion Rifle here will do 25% extra damage. And I believe it's for 10 seconds. But you can, increase the stacks of that and have the effect lasting for longer. And that's pretty much what it comes down to. So, how are you going to get your wells? How long are your wells going to last for? Or are you going to create more wells, such as with Bountiful Wells? So, well mods that cause you to spawn them now stack, and they spawn additional wells. And then with those wells, what do you want them to do? Font of Wisdom, I believe, is an underappreciated mod, where picking up an elemental well that matches your subclass energy grants you a temporarily significant increase in your intellect, improving the recharge rate of your super. What this actually does is adds 50 to this stat, meaning if you were tier 5 when you pick up a solar elemental well, if that's what you were running, if you were at tier 5, you pick up the solar elemental well. For 30 seconds, you are now at tier 10 intellect. Hence, earlier how I said you could kind of fake this 100 stat. So you'd be running tier 10 for 30 seconds. By that time, you've spawned another elemental well, picked it up, the timer refreshes. You're now running, if you were running something like this, I can essentially simulate running triple 100 stats. And who doesn't want more stats? Another key mod I would like to go would be elemental shards. So for you hunters out there, if you actually run the aspect that grants you, I mean, it works with everybody, but hunters have a laugh at this. If you run this with the aspect that causes shards on melee kills when you throw your chakrams, the stasis shards will count as stasis elemental wells for you, meaning you basically have unlimited wells, if that's what you want to go down. You can also combine it with a seasonal mod, such as Thermoclastic Blooming, where defeating a combatant with a solar or stasis melee creates an orb of power. So you throw one chakram, you get yourself to tier 10 intellect, drop 4 or 5 orbs of light because it'll shred red bars in day-to-day activities like it's nothing, which gets you even more super. Very good perk combination there. Now the last style I want to talk about, which do follow the same rules, would be Warmind cells. Now, Warmind cells were, to put it a better way, the hot shit for quite a while. However, they got nerfed recently, and I haven't seen many people using them at all. Now, it does lock you into certain weapons, but there's always ways around that, but they still follow the same principle. So when I say it locks you into certain weapons, you will be looking for a Ikelos, such as the SMG. Also comes in shotgun, hand cannon, and sniper varieties. Or the 7th Seraph weapons. So you have this, I believe there is also a hand cannon as well, a sidearm, and an auto rifle. And then the question comes to is, how are you going to spawn your cells, and what do you want the cells to do? So the easiest one to do it was to run something like the Ikelos SMG, and defeating combatant with a Seraph or Ikelos weapon has a chance to drop a Warmind cell. So this does work every 5 kills you get with the weapon, will drop a Warmind cell. And then what do you want the Warmind cell to do? Do you want it to make you charge with light? Do you want to have it so that the the enemies do less damage towards you? This is the one I was actually looking for. Do you want it to burn your enemies? Do you want it to heal you? The principle is the same, but like I say, this does kind of lock you in to your weapons. However, with that in mind, if we use a weapon like the Witherhoard grenade launcher, if you throw your Witherhoard out, and then while the Witherhoard does the damage over time, pull out your Ikelos SMG, the game thinks that you got the kills with the Ikelos and can help you spawn more Warmind cells. That's always something to keep in mind. So, as a kind of base example, I thought I would just go over what I opted for with my armor in terms of mods and why. And hopefully that'll give you an idea of having everything in practice. The first thing you want to be doing is deciding what exotic do you want to use. Now, I've got 2 separate builds been using for PvE. This has been the main one with I Have Another World. I Have Another World highlights priority targets and improves the regeneration rate of your grenade, melee, and rift abilities. And yes, this does work even though I'm on tier 10. So even though I'm on tier 10 discipline, meaning I have a grenade every 32 seconds, I Have Another World lowers this down still, meaning I get them back even quicker, and who doesn't want that? Now, because I'm throwing grenades a lot, I went for Ashes to Assets, so I gain bonus super energy on grenade kills, helping to mitigate the fact that I'm on slightly less intellect than all of my other stats. However, for certain activities, if I go to combat style here, I will run something like Become Charged with the Light by defeating combatants with grenade launchers. Very handy for raid content where there's a lot of ads, and I'll run the Witherhoard, helping me become charged with light. as you can see, I am actually running a Charge with Light build anyway, so I pick up an Orb of Power, I become Charged with Light. Next I'll go over this, where Supercharged, so I can have 2 additional stacks of Charged with Light, up to a maximum of 5. The reason I mentioned earlier about with the resilience stats, how it's also not great, is because these mods, such as Solar Resistance, which can only go on Solar Armour, Concussive Dampeners, so reduced incoming area effect damage from combatants. We also have the melee and sniper options. This reduces your damage by about, your incoming damage by about 40%, which does significantly more than just increasing your health by 1%. So there's no reason not to have at least one of these on. I'm running double at the moment, because I just came off from doing a run of Deepstone Crypt. And it's nice to, not die, be able to tank a little bit more. Next, we're going to the legs. I'm currently using Powerful Friends, where when I become charged with light, nearby allies also become charged with light if they are not already. By adding an additional arc mod, so reducing my melee cooldown each time I pick up an Orb of Power, which obviously mitigates the low melee stat that I have. I also get plus 20 mobility. The thing to partner this with, you could also get plus 20 strength by casting your super causes nearby allies to become charged with light. Now I'm taking Powerful Friends at the moment because why not take the mobility buff? But for a lot of content in particular, I'll use something like Lucent Blade if I'm using swords. And recently I also used Heavy Handed. So while surrounded by multiple combatants, defeating a combatant with a fusion rifle, shotgun, sidearm or submachine gun adds ammo for that weapon to your reserves. Now obviously primaries do have unlimited ammo now, but you do generate ammo out of thin air. The key thing to note here is surrounded means having 3 or more enemies within a 15-meter radius of yourself. And then lastly, we have my class item, which I currently have in Solar. So, and another additional stack of Charge with Light, combined with Particle Deconstruction, so dealing damage to a combatant with a fusion rifle or linear fusion rifle grants bonus damage with those weapons. Hence why I'm running Cartesian Coordinate 1000 Voices, debuffs the target by about 40%. So these are melting at the moment. So as you can see here, I'm getting a lot of stacks of Charge with Light, and what am I doing with it? Well, that all goes into my arm mod, which is Protective Light. So when I become Red Bar, I get a buff in the bottom left corner that will say Resist times 4, I believe. And that will keep me alive, allow me to get to cover when my 100 recovery kicks in, and allows me to regen my health. The other build I've been using, but still follows the same principles, is one around Boots of the Assembler. Standing in a Healing Rift creates Noble Seekers that will seek out allies and heal them. Standing in an Empowering Rift will give you and your ally a damage bonus. Each time a Noble Seeker finds one of your allies, the duration of your rift is briefly extended. These boots are god tier. I have unlimited rift, essentially, as long as my Seekers are finding targets. I basically never have a rift, or at least by the time my rift runs out, I have a new rift. Something key to mention here as well, because I run Empowering Rift quite a lot, the Empowering Rift damage buff from Boots of the Assembler is 35%, which is equivalent to Weapons of Light or a Titan Bubble that you have on a 40-second cooldown. So that is something to keep in mind. This is a very, very, very good exotic. However, as you can see, the principles, I have Radiant Light on here at the moment, so casting my super causes nearby allies to become charged with light. Even though, in fact, I'm going to change that to Powerful Friends again. Even though I have, a different organization of the mods, it's still the same protective light. So as you can see, my build is purely based on survivability, because I like to stay alive. However, we can also change this as well. If I go over to my PvP loadout, and this would be my PvP build. Now, as you can see, my stats are slightly different. I've actually still got I've still got the 100 recovery, but I am running higher intellect. And that's because in the Crucible, I want my super to come up as much as possible for those clutch scenarios. But I still want the 100 recovery, but I have dropped down to 7 discipline. Now, you might be asking, why have I done this? Well, I've done this because if you look at bottom tree Devour, assuming my grenade grants Devour, regems my health, while Devour is active, extends its duration, recharges your grenade. So I might only have 1, but then if I get 2 or 3 kills, it rapidly boosts my grenade charge rate anyway. And we like that. So what's the difference here? Well, the main difference being... Oh, no, that's why I have Radiant Light on here. Apologies. Is instead of survivability, because Protective Light does not work in the Crucible, I instead opt for High Energy Fire. So as stated earlier, while charged with light, gain a bonus to weapon damage. So how do I become charged with light? Well, we have Taking Charge. So I pick up an Orb of Power, I become charged with light. And this is where you get some synergy. So Powerful Friends and Radiant Light synergize very well. So casting your super causes nearby allies to become charged with light. Because of Powerful Friends, when you become charged with light, nearby allies also become charged with light if they are not already. So these two work very, very well together. So if you have another teammate who also uses charge with light and they're using Powerful Friends, you can bounce off each other, keeping your charge with light uptime up, High Energy Fire active. Why Ophidians? Well, I opt for Ophidians. I have a habit of changing a weapon a lot. So the faster swap speed is very important to me, as you can see. I also get reload speed quick, and the melee range extended is also quite handy. Destiny has a huge desync problem with melee attacks, so the range does make it a bit more consistent. Not quite as consistent as something like Syntheseps on the Titans, but this does work very well. And then I was using this in the raid last night, hence why we have these mods here. But typically speaking, here I would put my targeting mods specifically for my PvP loadout. So I did discuss the combat style mods, but the other ones to keep in mind would be ammo finders, targeting. They are simply a case of what are you running, and then obviously everybody wants more ammo. PvPers, targeting, gifting you headshots, always handy. So the last thing I want to go over as part of this video, I know it's been a long one, I promise, I say I promise it'll be worth it. Maybe it isn't worth it for you, I don't know. You'll have to let me know in the comments down below. But the last thing I would want to talk about is where, so you can see here I've got a 99 boosted helmet. Where do I get this armor from? There's a few places. We have the helm and the Umbral Decoder, which you can focus and use the tier 3 focusing. You can get high rolls in a stat of your choice. If you have access to the Season of the Splicer, I would recommend using that tier focusing because it's actually dropping high stat, whereas the newer stuff is a bit meh in comparison. For reference, I would class high stat as probably 60 or higher, unless you have something that's, the perfect stat distribution for what you want it to do. Your other options would be once a week you can do the Pit of Heresy dungeon if you have access to Shadowkeep. This will drop, I believe, a piece of armor from the boss that will be at least 16 in 2 stats. But you can only do this once a week, once per character. It's not farmable. The best armor in the game, I mean, other than, some of the stuff that you can get from the raids, but even then, it's still hit and miss. The best armor you can get from the game is actually in the Prophecy Dungeon. The Prophecy Dungeon is farmable. You can do it as many times as you want. but the armor you get from here is typically very high. So my legs of 107, the Prophecy Dungeon, my PvE from the Coda set Prophecy Dungeon, those weren't these arms that I've been using for certain builds. It's all from the Prophecy. So I would strongly recommend you going there for your armor, because it will drop high stat. It's farmable. Everybody likes the easy way, right? So that concludes my TED Talk on Destiny Armor and stats. If you have any questions, feel free to comment. I'll answer them as best as I can. If you would like, hit like if this helps you, and subscribe for more. If you'd like me to do, discussing my weapons and what I look for, feel free to request it, and I'm sure if enough people ask for it, I'll get around to it. I know this was a long one. I know this was slightly different to what I would normally do, but like I say, I just want to help the community. So if this helps, please let me know, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thank you.